Let's not sugarcoat it. Being nice will not save you. In fact, in today's world, it might be the very thing that's holding you back. You've been told that goodness guarantees safety, love, success, but deep down, you've seen the truth. The world doesn't play fair. And worse, you already know that. You've just been pretending not to. Let me ask you something personal, and I want you to be honest with yourself. How many times have you been the one who always does the right thing, only to be ignored, overlooked, or worse, taken advantage of? How many times have you extended your kindness, given someone the benefit of the doubt, or stayed silent to keep the peace, only to walk away feeling used, disrespected, or invisible? If you're like most people, you were taught to believe that being good is enough, that if you're honest, noble, and kind, life will somehow reward you for it. But has it? Because here's the truth. The world doesn't reward goodness. It rewards strategy. It doesn't elevate the kind-hearted just because they're kind. It elevates those who know how to navigate human nature, which, as Niccolo Machiavelli brutally observed, is ungrateful, fickle, false, cowardly, and greedy. That's not cynicism. That's realism. And Machiavelli didn't write The Prince as a guide for villains. He wrote it as a survival manual for those who were tired of being crushed by the very systems they trusted. Now ask yourself, how many times have you fallen into the trap of thinking your goodness would protect you? How many times have you watched others less honest, more calculated rise while you remain stuck, frustrated, or disillusioned? You might say, but I don't want to be manipulative, and that's fair. But Machiavelli isn't asking you to betray your principles. He's asking you to wake up, to see the game for what it is, and finally learn how to play it. Look around you. The people you admire, the ones with influence, authority, power, do you really believe they got there through kindness alone? Of course not. They got there because they understood the dance between light and shadow. Because they learned that morality is not an obstacle, it's a tool. Knowing when to reveal it and when to withhold it, that's not deception. That's wisdom. The real danger isn't in being good. It's in being good without protection. When you assume everyone plays by the same rules as you, you make yourself easy to manipulate. And in a world full of opportunists who can smell naivety from a mile away, that kind of innocence is an open invitation to be exploited. That's why Machiavelli's lesson matters now more than ever. He offers you not cruelty, but clarity, not ruthlessness, but resilience. What he teaches is intelligent kindness, kindness with eyes wide open. It's the strength to say no without guilt. It's the ability to read people, to anticipate intentions, to withhold trust until it's earned. It's the courage to stop playing the victim and start playing smart. Because let's be honest, how far has your desire to be liked really gotten you? Machiavelli once said, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." And maybe that sounds harsh. Maybe it goes against everything you were taught. But here's a deeper question. Why does it scare you? Is it because you've built your identity around being liked? Around being seen as harmless? Around pleasing others so they won't abandon you? But let me ask, what has that really earned you? Has it earned you respect? Has it made people take your boundaries seriously? Or has it simply taught them that they can use you without consequence? Kindness without strength invites pity, not respect. You were born to carry both heart and armor. This isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming conscious. So no, I'm not telling you to stop being good. I'm telling you to stop being naive. Learn how to protect your goodness so that it doesn't get twisted into weakness. Understand that the world doesn't elevate the most honest. It elevates the most aware. That true virtue isn't about blind sacrifice. It's about the art of balance, where ethics and pragmatism meet. And now, I leave you with a question. What kind of good do you want to be? The kind that is walked over, or the kind that walks forward, eyes open, with quiet power? Because the dark side of goodness isn't evil, it's blindness. Let me ask you something deeper. Not the kind of question you answer politely, but the kind that lingers. How many times have you kept quiet just to avoid making others uncomfortable? How many times have you swallowed your truth, sacrificed your needs, or tolerated disrespect, all in the name of being good. And in return, what did you really get? If you're honest with yourself, you already know. Being good, by itself, isn't enough. Not in a world where visibility often matters more than virtue. Not in a world that rewards confidence over quiet sacrifice. And Machiavelli knew this. He once wrote, "It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles." Meaning, it's not your goodness that earns you respect, it's how you carry it. This is where most well-meaning people fall short. You assume that your kindness will speak for itself, that your effort will be recognized without you having to assert your worth. But the world isn't built that way. In fact, the more silent you are about your value, the more likely it is to be ignored or exploited. We've been taught that humility means staying small, that to be moral, we must be modest, self-effacing, agreeable. But Machiavelli challenges that illusion. He reminds us that invisibility is not a virtue, it's a vulnerability. And in a competitive world, what's vulnerable gets used. It's not enough to be strong, you have to look strong. It's not enough to be sincere, you have to command attention. Because people don't follow those who merely do good. They follow those who appear in control, who understand timing, presence, and the subtle language of influence. So the question becomes, how much longer will you wait for others to notice your quiet worth? How many more chances will you let slip by while telling yourself that your patience will pay off? Because while you're waiting, others, often less qualified, less kind, are already taking up space you were taught to shrink away from. This isn't a call to arrogance, it's a call to intentional self-respect. Machiavelli isn't asking you to fake strength, he's asking you to stop hiding it. To stop assuming that goodness alone will protect you in a world that values perception as much as principle. So ask yourself, are you living by strategy or by wishful thinking? Because if your kindness isn't paired with strength, boundaries, and presence, it won't be seen as noble. It'll be seen as weakness. And you deserve better than that. Let me ask you something that might hit close to home. Have you ever said too much thinking honesty would bring you closer to someone only to realize they were listening just enough to use your words against you later? Most of us were taught that vulnerability is strength, that if you explain yourself fully, clarify your intentions, show your heart, people will understand you better. But the truth? Not everyone deserves that access. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He wrote, "A prince must be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves." And that wisdom still holds today. Because in a world where every interaction is quietly recorded in someone's memory, your words aren't just expressions. They're currency. They can empower you or bankrupt you. The most powerful people in any room are rarely the ones talking the most. They're the ones who speak less. But when they do, every word lands. They've mastered what Machiavelli would call the art of controlled mystery, revealing only what's necessary and letting the rest remain undefined. Why? Because silence creates curiosity, and curiosity creates control. Now think about your own life. How many times have you over-explained yourself trying to be understood by people who were never truly listening? I once worked with a man who always explained his every move, thinking, transparency, built trust. But it only gave others the tools to undermine him. The more he revealed, the more predictable and powerless he became. How many times have you justified your choices to those who had no intention of respecting them? That's not integrity. That's leaking power. We live in a world that confuses openness with authenticity. But Machiavelli challenges us to ask, at what cost? When you're too transparent, you become predictable. And when you're predictable, you become controllable. This isn't about deception. It's about discernment. It's about learning to hold back strategically, not from fear, but from self-respect. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Let me ask you something that might sting. Have you ever felt like people could read you too easily? Like they always knew what you'd tolerate, what you'd say, how you'd react? That's not just frustrating, it's dangerous. Because in a world driven by power dynamics, predictability is a liability. Machiavelli said it best. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. And hidden within that sentence is a powerful principle. Unpredictability protects you. When others can map out your every move, they can manipulate the outcome. But when you become less obvious, when your reactions are thoughtful, not habitual, you become harder to control. And in a world that exploits familiarity, being unreadable is power. This is why some people command a room without saying a word. It's not about arrogance. It's about intention. They've learned to manage their presence, to be seen when it matters and missed when it doesn't. Because here's a hard truth. The more available you are, the less people value your presence. The more you give without pause, the more they expect. And eventually, they stop noticing. Not because you lack value, but because you've made yourself too easy to reach. Machiavelli warned against excessive familiarity, not to create distance for its own sake, but because scarcity creates gravity. When something becomes rare, it becomes revered. And the same applies to your time, your energy, your presence. This isn't about manipulation. It's about emotional economics. You cannot be everywhere, for everyone, all the time, and expect to be remembered as someone of depth and impact. So ask yourself, are you building connection or enabling entitlement? Are you teaching people to respect your presence or to expect it on demand? Power isn't always about being louder. Sometimes it's about knowing when to step back and letting your absence speak in ways your presence never could. When was the last time a comment cut so deep you reacted without thinking? That flash of anger, that defensive tone, that sinking feeling in your chest. In that moment, be honest, who had the power? Here's the uncomfortable truth. The one who controls your emotions controls you. And Machiavelli knew this long before modern psychology caught up. He wrote, "A prudent man must act at all times with coldness and calculation, not because emotion is bad, but because when you lose control, you lose leverage." Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it watches in silence. It waits. It observes. The strongest presence in the room is rarely the loudest. It's the one who can't be shaken. Think about it. In conflict, who wins? The person who gets flustered and lashes out, or the one who stays calm, speaks little, and makes the room lean in? Emotional control isn't suppression, it's sovereignty. It's the quiet discipline of choosing your response, not surrendering it. And here's where it goes deeper. We live in a world obsessed with speed. Instant reaction, instant reward, instant answers. But Machiavelli reminds us real power lies in patience. Strategic patience isn't passivity. It's the strength to hold your fire until the perfect moment. The hunter doesn't shoot at the first sound. He watches. He breathes. He lines up the shot. And when he moves, he doesn't miss. So, ask yourself, are you reacting or responding? Are you chasing noise or waiting for your moment? Because in the real game of power, it's not the fastest who win. It's the most centered, the most aware, the most unshakable. When you learn to combine emotional discipline with strategic timing, you stop playing defense. You stop being manipulated. You stop handing away your influence. And for the first time, you don't just survive the system, you start bending it. So now you see it clearly. Kindness without strategy is not a virtue, it's a risk. Predictability isn't loyalty, it's a liability. And silence, when used wisely, can be louder than any speech. The world doesn't reward those who simply mean well. It rewards those who move with awareness, those who pair integrity with intelligence, who protect their value, not by withdrawing from life, but by navigating it with clarity, patience, and power. So ask yourself, are you still playing by rules that were never written for your benefit? Or are you finally ready to rewrite them? Because the truth is, you don't have to stop being good. You just have to stop offering your goodness unguarded. Start small, say less, watch more. Withdraw strategically. Let absence amplify your presence. Learn to respond instead of react. And above all, stop proving your worth and start owning it. And if this message found you at the right time, if something inside you stirred, sharpened, or woke up, type this in the comments. Good, but not blind. Not for the algorithm, but for someone else scrolling in silence, wondering if they're the only one waking up. Let it be a signal. Let it be a shift. And if you're ready to keep learning how to move through this world with strength, strategy, and self-respect, subscribe to Psychology Insights, because this is only the beginning. Don't just be good, be unshakable. And when the world tries to bend, you be the one who bends it back.